Ladies and gentlemen, coming soon, a podcast you've all been waiting for. The Movie Podcast to end all movie podcasts. A podcast that discusses and critiques the best of the best and the worst of the worst movies playing at a theater near you. With a host whose opinions have been deemed as fact by your favorite fact checkers. And that's a fact. Without further ado, let me introduce you to the movie maestro, the tyrant of theater, the gumshoe of review, the man that makes theater employees and Hollywood execs shiver by his mere presence. Ladies and gentlemen, the judge, the jury, the sultan of cinema, Justin Henson. Welcome to the Movie Wire.
And welcome to this week's edition of The Movie Wire. I'm your host, Justin Henson, and welcome to the show. We've got a big show this week with 4 brand new reviews, with 1 that opens today, 2 that are playing right now, and 1 early review. This week on the show, discover the origin behind the rivalry in Transformers 1. Love hurts and the devil's in the details in Strange Darling. Meeting new people can be such a thriller in Speak No Evil. And finally, witness the beginning of all evil in this early review of Hellboy the Crooked Man, which releases in theaters September 27th. We've got a lot to cover this week, so let's jump right in. Ready for my verdict? Let's get into it.
Out of the windows to watch. A roar and a burst of flame. The Movie Wire podcast.
There it is.
We just need people like me.
Podcast for hot and trending movies.
The Wire.
And here we go.
The untold story of Optimus Prime and Megatron, better known as sworn enemies but once were friends, bonded like brothers who changed the fate of Cybertron forever in this animated prequel, Transformers 1.
For thousands of years, we have been at war. But before, we were enemies. We were like brothers.
You ready?
Always ready. Let's punch in. Hey, watch where you're going.
What did you say?
It's not like he can transform.
Hey, Darkwing.
Don't.
My finger can transform. Guess which one?
Allow me.
I appreciate you having my back.
No matter what.
What is that?
Sending location coordinates.
Under attack! It's an SOS message from the surface.
Fantastic.
It's time to show them we are more than meets the eye.
A cave with teeth. Nothing scary about that. Holy Primus.
I see strength in you. Take these and access your full potential.
We can transform now!
How do we use these things?
Come on!
How you choose to use this power is up to you.
We roll out.
What?
Louder.
Transform and roll out! I want to help build a better world.
Like you said, we can be so much more.
Maybe it's just me, but he's different.
Yeah, no, I picked up on that.
I picked up on that too.
What happened to my best friend? Burn it down! All of it!
We have to stop him.
We could have built the future together.
I don't think so.
Decepticons! Rise up! Incoming!
Come on!
Awesome!
That's what I'm talking about.
Now is the time for us to stand up. Together. As one.
Look, that's Starscream, and you're Shockwave and Soundwave.
Enough!
Gosh, raise your hand if Wave is in your name. There's a lot of Wave.
Now, The Transformers films is my go-to when it comes to franchises that just get so lazy, so bogged down, watered down, with stories that just feel like the intent of look what I can do versus making fans happy, or even the other side of the aisle by adding any value or substance. So what happens when box office numbers start to decline with each and every movie that comes out and becomes frightening to studios? They won't give up. It's too valuable. It's too valuable in marketing. It's too valuable in toys, t-shirts, whatever it may be. They're gonna fucking reboot it. And in this case, I can respect to an extent of bringing back the childlike nostalgia to appease fans of not only the feeling of an animated Transformers movie, but also an attempt to give entertainment and common ground to kids as well. I can always appreciate when a movie comes out that can be a target for both kids and adults alike. So again, if I take the cynical side of me out, I can appreciate the intent of what the studios are doing here. With endless possibilities on the telling of a backstory of Transformers and the characters, along with animation on their side to really create characters and environments to tell a story, I have to say that Transformers 1 is more like Transformers 2-ish. 2 out of 4. It's safe. It gives fans their characters. It gives them simplistic backstories with a bromance between Optimus Prime and Megatron, voiced by Chris Hemsworth and Brian Tyree Henry, and I'll get into the voice work here in a second. Lastly, it gives an underwhelming environment and depth into these characters and chemistries that make me care less about the outcome. Now, before I just deep dive into this, let me just say, the visual animation, it does look sharp. It does have a nostalgic tone to it. The character designs are unique and just different enough to be engaging as a start of an underdog story without taking away from the characters we know. Our writers Andrew Barra, Gabriel Ferrari from Ant-Man and the Wasp, and Eric Pearson from Thor Ragnarok, Godzilla vs. Kong, and Black Widow seem to really try and bank on the premise of our characters to the point of me pondering during the movie if this was actually intended to be this simplistic for children under 8, or they really were trying to go for a elongated TV cartoon with a story that could have taken 30 minutes to tell. Transformers 1 is purely a Saturday morning cartoon meant for families, for something mild to do, to get kind of in a rhythm on a Saturday afternoon when school has just started, and just enough time for it to come to streaming before the holidays hit to buy the toys that kids and even some adults want to buy. And that's okay. We as kids have been there. I don't think it would be right to have an animated movie that didn't have something to offer kids after viewing. But Transformers 1 makes the cynical side of me shine with my thoughts that went from, it's okay to have a movie that offers merch to really enhance the experience, to, this is just a fucking movie to sell merch. This is a 90-minute commercial to sell toys. I was really hoping walking into Transformers that, again, quoting Transformers, that this movie would be more than meets the eye. But it wasn't. It had a plethora of possibilities of creating a world that has piqued our curiosities. Our prior Transformers movies have had robotic characters that relied usually on human characters to help drive this story. And now we are back on the planet of Cybertron, and it's all eyes on our main robots, our main Transformers. There are so many directions they could have taken a prequel to Transformers, especially with all the goddamn Transformers movies, all the cartoons, all the lore of it, and we don't get any of it. We don't get anything that really quenches our thirst to tell us the backstory between our Megatron and our Optimus Prime. This is a missed opportunity of pure imagination to really touch our youth, to really show something of messaging, to show something of imagination. And I'm not even bringing up critically thinking with our youth, but at the same time, just don't give us something that's so simplistic with all the possibilities of animation and this lore and the characters. Our first time at the director's helm, Josh Cooley, who originally wrote Inside Out and Toy Story 4, adds nothing new of originality to the table. This is the first major motion picture to take place on Cybertron, and I merely just shrugged my shoulders. There is nothing here of uniqueness to really take me to a new world. Instead, we get a heavy focus on the forced and simplistic chemistry of Prime and Megatron that I think our writers had no idea how to create a history or a chemistry. The only thing that these two have in common is the mere fact that they do the same work, which are miners that mine energy for Cybertron. And instead of dialogue that really builds something emotionally and memorable between these two, we get brief, simplistic lines that tell us how to feel, such as, "I got you, bro. We can do it. I trust you." It's like these lines are dialogue were pre-recorded that's going to be inserted into the toys that come out shortly. There is nothing of believable substance here. We all know what the outcome is going to be when it comes to Prime and Megatron's relationship, so the only job our writers have to do is create a chemistry that makes sense and makes us emotionally feel something and care. And this movie doesn't do any of that. Instead, this is just a 90-minute chew of bubblegum that will lose its flavor up until the last 30 minutes until our writers make us take out another piece of gum and tape our eyelids open and pump us full of pure eye candy action that attempts to make us forget about the relationships, the friendships, and just watch what all other Michael Bay Transformers movies have done in the climax, only if they were animated. Open and honest, I really did try to reach to my inner child with this one and think of all the movie experiences from IPs that I've had to try and convince myself to like this. I thought of DuckTales, Treasure of the Lost Lamp, the Jetsons movie, and a Goofy movie. Now, two of these we know were expansions of the brand, being the Jetsons and DuckTales. And the Goofy movie added heart, relatability, and emotion along with an expansion. Here we don't get any of the above, including a good origin story. The biggest two problems I had with Transformers 1 is, of course, doing nothing with the environment, especially being animated. We do have a couple good moments here and there. There is a scene where we see a robotic deer-like creature along with forest or grass, and I really wanted to see more of this. I wanted this to be a curiosity, an expansion of the environment. We are seeing Cybertron in a lengthy fashion for the first time on the big screen and in an animated style movie, and our filmmakers do absolutely nothing with it. Back in 2005, 20th Century Fox Animation did it better with robots than this piece of crap. And I will also place a bet. I will place a challenge to those of you that watch it on streaming. Hit pause, pick anywhere in the film, and then start it. I bet you will see running robots within 5 minutes anywhere in this movie. This film is so focused on the spectacle of the IP versus creating something with real heart. My second problem is the cast and voices. This movie's entire budget must have gone completely to the voice talent, that I could pick maybe 2 out of the entire cast that I actually kinda recognize. And when it comes to Optimus Prime and Megatron, these voices just seem off. My ears couldn't adjust. I didn't have buy-in to their voice portrayals. It's like they thought they took the roles of voice actors for the next Paw Patrol movie, and that was good enough. These vocals for these characters are so tame, so lifeless, and I don't know how to say it, but they're just not, transforming robot enough. Actually, nobody really is until the last, say, 20 minutes. But we have such talents as Scarlett Johansson, John Hamm, Steve Buscemi, Lawrence Fishburne, and I can only name 2 out of the 3 voices that I kind of recognize, but I really had to think about it. Which goes to show, for the love of God, high-profile names doesn't matter in an animated movie. Transformers 1 isn't a reboot, but merely a Michael Bay animated film in disguise that banks on familiar characters. Now, the big question, will it entertain the family? Probably. It has colorful animation, it has familiar characters that most families will recognize, but adds nothing of value or intrigue given the limitless possibilities of an animated world. It's just a longer Saturday morning cartoon. And for those of you that have that expectation and that expectation only, you most likely will have a good time. But for me, I wanted something much, much more. I'm giving Transformers 1 2 stars.
Roll out.
A family is invited to spend a whole weekend in a lonely home in the countryside. But as the weekend progresses, they realize a dark side lies within the family who invited them. And speak no evil.
This is my husband, Ben.
Patrick Feld, this is my wife, Kira.
This is Agnes. and has some trouble communicating. He can be a bit insecure.
Nice Vespa. Yeah, isn't she? You should try.
Can we?
I won't call the fun police if you don't.
Okay.
Io lo so che mi chiami anche da diversi fusi orari. Ieri siamo stati esagerati.
Back before I quit my practice. You're a lawyer. Doctor, listen, you have to come and visit. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah? Yeah. Done.
It's so quiet around here. Don't even have any neighbors.
Hey, you made it.
Welcome.
Ta-da!
You are VIP guests.
Just to remind you, I'm a vegetarian.
Our gift to you.
That is so... I'm...
Louise, doctor's orders.
Very good.
Settle in. I promise you guys, it could be a great weekend.
How long's it been?
17 years.
17 years. Wow.
You get less for murder.
Something's not right with him.
He has a condition. It makes it hard for him to communicate.
Sometimes it's okay to think things, but you can't actually say them. Oh, no.
Thank God there's a doctor in the house.
I'm not a doctor. What?
But didn't you say you were a doctor?
Did I? Yeah. Look at their faces. Of course I'm a bloody doctor.
Agnes, why don't you and Aunt show us the dance that you've been working on?
And what is wrong with you? Just feel the rhythm in your feet. Right, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the one.
What is wrong with you? I want to pack up the car and I want to leave right now.
I'm just sad to see you go.
You're gonna go out there and be completely normal.
We've been pretending it's normal since we got here. Dad?
Remember that time you guys came to stay? You flipped out and tried to leave without saying goodbye?
Speak No Evil was a surprise this week as a formula that we have seen over and over again. Even more so, this is an American remake from the recent 2022 film from Denmark. So not only a remake, but a remake of a formula we see quite often. This formula of a thriller usually comes with secluded danger impersonation or scenes of uncomfortable situations that just make us want to stand up and yell towards the screen, get out or run. As cinema now, compared to where we were even a decade to 90 years ago, repetitive formulas we at times complain about, but at the end of the day, it's all about the execution of what the film sought out to do. Speak No Evil is a great example of taking the same predictable formula where we can see everything coming, but the performances and chemistry is done so well it's hard not to take our eyes off the screen. It really does take a great ensemble of performances to take this formula and go into a movie like Speak No Evil and think you know everything that's coming, but the movie's dialogue and performances are so good it makes you second guess yourself, which leaves for a clever way to make something feel fresher than what it is. Speak No Evil follows the story of a family, Ben Dalton played by Scoot McNairy and Lewis Dalton played by Mackenzie Davis, along with their young daughter Agnes played by Alex West Lefter, who all meet another overly eager and happy couple, Patty and Louise played by James McAvoy and Mackenzie Davis, and their mute son Ant played by Dan Hugh. Patty and Louise invite the Daltons to spend the weekend at their secluded home on the countryside. The mysterious couple seems to be the epitome of success and happiness, and their hospitality seems genuine and infectious. However, as most thrillers go, we know that's not what the ending result's gonna be. We know how this formula is gonna work, we know what the outcome's gonna be, we know it's predictable, but it's how new and fresh it feels along the journey and how much the movie can make us feel unease as the story unfolds. As a thriller, the performances and dialogue make it work, and the narrative unfolds through a series of increasingly uncomfortable interactions, which are not over the top and and most are believable, which initially seem socially awkward, but gradually reveal deeper, more sinister layers. My biggest problem with thrillers, especially recycled ones, is the filmmakers and writers are so rushed to get to the big moment or big reveal into chaos that instead of thrills, it gives us just pure cheapness. Our writer-director James Watkins takes Kristen Taftrump's and Matt Taftsho's screenplay with similarities and makes it feel like he had a cast in mind while writing. Watkins is known for some slow burn horror, including 2008's Eden Lake and 2012's The Woman in Black. Here's where I have a level of respect for thrillers like this and the filmmaking process, and we recently saw it in my recently reviewed Blink Twice. We get these contrasting environments, but only when it becomes absolutely necessary, not for story, but messaging. It doesn't try and use the environments to increase the tension, doesn't take cheap shots like that. It truly appreciates the talent on screen to carry the story along and bring the tension. Most of Speak No Evil, we see the brightness of day until it becomes relevant to be at night. Now, does that mean the movie is without its tropes? Of course not. It does have its roll of the eye moments, but it's all forgivable because Watkins, we can appreciate the skill of what he's trying to pull off during the light of day. This is a harder feat to accomplish where you're not taking cheap shots in this movie. You're not making the entire movie dark with things popping out from the corners or just random heads popping through the door. So it takes its time to really build this environment. This is a story that goes on the journey to become a thriller, but also does have an underlying messaging and theme of the concept of normalcy and the lengths of which people will go to maintain the illusion of a perfect life. Patty and Louise represent the idolized version of success and happiness, which gradually reveals itself to be a facade, masking the can't have or want. Watkins never loses this North Star of storytelling during his writing or direction. Speak No Evil, most people will go into looking at the surface level of this movie because it's a thriller and it's there to entertain. But just below, there's a raw piece of society and human nature festering in our psyche. We go from bright and sunny landscapes to garage or shed doors, even bedroom and bathroom doors opening and closing out the light, to the dark to represent secrets, hints to something darker. Watkins also utilizes symbolic messaging to just not with the bad characters, but also challenges the morality of our Dalton family on the human conscience of right and wrong, and pushes their limits to show the audience what each character's moral limits are. Between these two families and each individual delivering a certain curiosity or character intrigue, this is what separates it from many others that came before. But is it still predictable? Fuck yes. Is it memorable as a story? Not really, but the performances and Watkins' crafted writing and direction will make this movie relevant and make me remember this director's name down the road, along with the talent. And just a side note, the casting of James McAvoy was a very smart move to really test his range. This was a win in my book for McAvoy and a perfect casting choice. He does a fantastic job in the portrayal by not giving everything away by attempting to give us a portrayal of being subtly sinister. In a lot of, again, formulaic movies like this, we usually have our antagonist really give subtle body language or hints like he's up to something. And I love the fact that McAvoy doesn't do that here. Speak No Evil isn't going to go down in history as the most memorable or the most thrilling, and it is recycled, it is predictable, but the filmmaking isn't, and the performances are definitely not. It makes a recycled feel fresh, but going back to basics with proper storytelling that has more below the surface level in messaging and properly utilizing its characters to help drive the thrills in the story. This is the watch of the week. I'm giving Speak No Evil 3 stars.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
Now, before we get into the rest of the show, make sure you check out my reviews for movies that just became available to rent, buy, or stream now.
Now available on video cassette.
True love never dies, but this movie should. And the remake to the Brandon Lee classic comes The Crow, which flew south really quick, and hopefully it stays the fuck there, receiving 1.5 stars. Meet Aya. She's an AI here to help in Afraid, but she couldn't help me end the movie quicker, and I'm afraid for anybody that wastes their money on this movie, receiving 1.5 stars. Alexa, block Afraid.
I'm having trouble connecting to the internet.
God fucking damn it. Fear is calling cuckoo, where at times it's cuckoo good and other times it's just cuckoo, receiving 2.5 stars. M. Night Shyamalan brings us into another one of his traps of storytelling in Trapped, that Trapped in 1.5 stars. A revenge story that we have all seen before, only this time it surrounds skincare that will make you want to put on a face mask, cucumbers and all, to avoid watching this movie in Skincare, that received 2 stars. One of the biggest box office bombs of the year, and rightfully so, is Borderlands. That really was Borland, receiving 1.5 stars. Nicolas Cage plays a serial killer in this haunting film that reminds us once again of how good of an actor Nicolas Cage is in Longlegs, which received 3 stars. Everything he draws is about to get real in Harold and the Purple Crayon that will make you wish you had an eraser, receiving 1 star. Every Murder Lives On in Oddity, which scared the surprise out of me, receiving 3.5 stars. Then finally, make room for new emotions in the Disney Pixar sequel, Inside Out 2, which was as organized as a teenager, but maybe that was the intent, receiving 3 stars. You can check out those reviews of my previous episodes, and while you do, don't forget to follow or subscribe, and please don't forget to leave me a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Now, before we get into the last set of reviews, there is a podcast that I listen to that adds some sugar and some spice to my week by talking about baking and murder cases, and that's with Karen and Ann over the Sugar Coated Murders podcast. Make sure you follow and subscribe, and don't forget to check out their new book, Click, Click, Click. The links to their show and the book will be in the description of this episode. But let's hear from Karen and Ann over the Sugar Coated Murders podcast now.
Hey, Ann Barner. Hey, Karen Beatty. We need a promo. You know, like where we talk about what we do on our podcast.
On our Sugar Coated Murder podcast? Like how we love to bake and talk about murder?
That's what we need to talk about.
There you go.
I think we've talked about it. Y'all find us on all your favorite listening apps.
Stay sweet.
And don't murder.
Because if you kill people,
we will talk about you.
Hellboy and rookie BPRD agent in the 1950s are sent to a remote community dominated by witches and led by a sinister local demon. In Hellboy, the Crooked Man.
There's something going on here. I need to understand it. Like you do.
It's exactly why you shouldn't be here.
You might say a demonic entity falls under our expertise. Crooked Man's waiting on you.
That's interesting.
Oh, you didn't want me to squash?
No, squashing's good.
I heard tales about him all my life. Most just called him the Crooked Man.
I thought Big Red wasn't scared of anything.
Oh, I know something you're afraid of.
You hear something?
Your road ends in the dark like mine.
Let's just keep on coming.
It ain't even really begun.
Come on, Snake, let's rattle.
Let not your horse be troubled. By way they know not. I will make the darkness light. And the crooked things straight. You doubt the power of prayer, son?
Just in case.
You know, part of the danger of getting so angry with some of these films is the fact these films will be waiting for me on repeat when I get sent to the depths of hell. And go figure, the film on repeat will most likely be called Hellboy. So here we go. Another attempt at bringing a success story of Hellboy to the big screen after Del Toro's 2004 and 2008 vision. We last saw Hellboy in an attempted reboot in 2019 with David Harbour as our Hellboy. And in no way was I a fan of that film, but at the same time I did recognize how hard it would be to compete with Del Toro's vision of the original 2 films. And after watching Hellboy the Crooked Man in comparison, makes me want to go back and revisit. Because I'm sure after watching Hellboy the Crooked Man, 2019's version may change my opinion on what a bad Hellboy movie really looks like. This go around, we have Jake Kesey as our Hellboy, along with his investigative partner, Bobby, played by Adolin Rudolph, with Brian Taylor in the director's seat. Now, what did surprise me with Taylor is that this isn't his usual feat, with movies such as 2006 Crank and its sequel in 2009, Crank High Voltage, along with the god-awful Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance, and the not-so-bad Mom and Dad, starring Nicolas Cage from 2017. The surprising part isn't the quality of storytelling, since Taylor's style feels to just yell go and figure it out in post-production and editing. We see some of that strategy here, but the pacing doesn't agree with this strategy, and the tone isn't Taylor's forte. And as we talk about tone, this is where I will give the film a little bit of credit here to Ivan Voskov's cinematography. We get a great setting and atmosphere here, but Taylor's direction puts it to waste, with characters that seem to not know where to stand, how to carry a conversation that doesn't come across as forced, and dialogue. My God, the dialogue. If you've ever wondered what it would be like if someone wrote a script while attempting to nurse a hangover while 1,000 jackhammers are pounding concrete outside, and then just handed it to a group of overworked, unexperienced talent, this film will answer that question for you. Our cast delivers this completely limp dialogue with a level of enthusiasm that suggests our cast was more interested in counting the minutes until they could clock out. This is one of those movies our casts are going to look back either out of work or saying, why in the fuck did I do this movie? Hellboy the Crooked Man was written by Christopher Golden, writer from many podcast series, including Slayer's The Buffyverse Story, our writer Brian Taylor, who's most notable is 2010's Jonah Hex, and there was some involvement from creator Mike Mignola. Now, given the original Hellboy creator was involved in this writing, this is most likely close to the original source material that you can get, and that may be true, but that doesn't make it a well-executed movie. I'm not a reader or follower, and I'm not familiar with the original source material other than the movies we got from 2004 and 2008. So those that go into this movie being fans of the material may find some value. Keyword, may find some value. But for me, after watching this vision of Hellboy, I have no desire to seek out the original source material, because the biggest thing that lacks here is the written material. Walking out of the movie, I could visualize a board meeting after dusting off a script in storage that was originally intended as a third entry to the X-Files movies, and it was brought to the studio meeting, and the studio said, this is too unintelligent to be an X-Files movie. Somebody at the table raises their hand and says, how about we throw 10 million at it, make it PG-13, and make it a quick generic horror movie? The table says no, it's not interesting enough. And another person at the table raises their hand and says, how about we just change the main character? Instead of having Agent Mulder or a generic character, how about we just change it to Hellboy and make no other changes to the script? The table then all stands up with a standing ovation of applause and says, let's do it.
You got a lot of moxie, kid.
This is what Hellboy the Crooked Man feels like. We take our Hellboy. This character is never properly utilized. We have this visually intriguing character, and all the other characters treat this demon-like creature as it's just normal. But not only that, at one point, I forgot I was even looking at something different, but just another generic character. How can a big red devil-like creature with cut-off horns and a big pointed tail become so generic that the human characters at one point outshine the intrigue and curiosity in this film? Now, just to be clear, I use the word intrigue very loosely here because every character is lifeless with the exception of our character Tom Farrell, played by Jefferson White, who joins Bobby and Hellboy after coming back to this mysterious village to find out he has lost his entire family. White's performance and subtle innocence is the most interesting piece of this film, and our filmmakers completely miss how good he actually is in this movie. Along with another character, a real blast from the past appearance of Joseph Marcel, who played Jeffrey in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, who also gives a fun but kind of based on nostalgia performance. It seems like this movie is intentionally skipping over a lot of good elements. Hellboy is so full of needless banter, the pacing is an absolute chore to get through. The film drags on with a relentless pace that made me feel like I was just hanging in cinematic purgatory before I'm introduced to my own personal traditional Hell. Scenes that should be packed with tension are instead filled with needless filler, and action sequences that should exhilarate are so poorly choreographed and edited that they show a lifeless mess of lazy filmmaking and simplistic sound. It's as if someone forgot that the key, the goal to an exciting action scene is actually making sure it's, exciting! One can't help but wonder if the budget was spent entirely on attempting to create a few visually striking moments, mostly on the location and the cinematography, only to have them overshadowed by consistent barrage of dullness of those moving things on screen this movie would call characters. We have moments here that feel like the director was trying to channel the gothic atmosphere of the original Hellboy films, but ended up with something that looks like it was shot in the basement with a flashlight and a few too many fog machines. Cinematographer Ivan Vatsoff has the right ideas, but he's completely bogged down by just sloppy, misguided direction. Hellboy the Crooked Man is lifeless, boring, with absolutely no direction or idea of what to do with it or its characters. This movie should have just opened up with a narration of Welcome to Hell, because that is absolutely what it is. Cinematic hell. But to its credit, it at least puts the hint of what this movie is in the title. We just need to cut out the boy and the crooked man out of it and just call it Hell. I'm giving Hellboy the Crooked Man 1.5 stars. Nothing is what it seems when a twisted one-night stand spirals into a serial killer's vicious murder spree in Strange Darling.
This is a dramatization of the true story of the final known killings of the most prolific and unique American serial killer of the 21st century.
You know you asked for this, right?
Just trying to have a good time.
I'm in control.
Don't say it out loud.
Gotcha.
I want something intimate, something romantic.
Now, here is one of the habits that I've gotten into over the last couple of years. With more and more movies with little to no marketing budgets hit theaters, I don't seek out watching the trailer, or at times, I don't even read the synopsis to these lesser advertised movies. Doing this show, knowing that it's going to be reviewed, I put it on the schedule, walk in, and see it with little to no knowledge. Strange Darling is a good example of how this at times can benefit the film-going experience, walking into it with knowing nothing. And you know what? I might actually advise reading the synopsis, but I would recommend stopping there. No online research, no audience reviews, no trailers, just walk in and enjoy the ride. Strange Darling was written and directed by J.T. Molnar from the flawed but atmospheric entertaining Outlaws and Angels from 2016. Now, Molnar does attempt numerous ambitious angles with Strange Darling to attempt to bring us something different from the formulaic serial killer movie formula. This includes a notation in the beginning of the movie with it being based on actual events of one of the most iconic killing sprees of all time, with also an opening seeming like deja vu from the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre style. Molnar gets our attention from the get-go, but he doesn't stop there. To ensure that the audience stays on their toes, he splits the movie up in chapters, and these chapters don't go in order. Strange Darling focuses around two primary characters, the lady and the demon, played by Willa Fitzgerald and Kyle Gallner, who we will see again this year in Smile 2. As Molnar bounces between chapters to see later aftermath to the beginning of their relationship, he gives us a mix of chaos and curiosity that we are mentally trying to piece together the who, what, why, and how. All in the while, when the lady and the demon are on screen, we are actively looking for behavioral traits to fill in these questions. The biggest forte comes from our two main leads, Fitzgerald and Gallner. More specifically, Gallner, who leads us on a journey of guessing and making the viewer ask the question numerous times of what happened, what's the motivation, And I will leave my last two questions to myself for those that want to watch the film, that may want to experience these questions by themselves. Strange Darling was packed full of surprises and innovations of telling the story of a serial killer that, not knowing anything going into this, it did take me about the 20-minute mark to really take in what Molnar was trying to do. After one's eyes adjust to the unique storytelling, I felt myself engulfed into this journey led by Fitzgerald and Gallner. The movie reminded me of the 2006 stage-to-screen telling of Bug starring Ashley Judd and Michael Shannon that also surrounded a very toxic relationship. Just one that makes you feel more icky after watching that one than this one. Where we lose the ick, we gain in character study that comes across from actions from sexual kinks, the desire to be desired, desperation of the dream to have the perfect person. Well, at least sexually. With our two main characters, the lady and the demon, our filmmakers try and convince us that any gut feeling of trouble may just be indigestion or the 2 lines of cocaine you just took. But as we get into this story, we start putting the puzzle pieces together and we start getting validation that our gut feeling is right, we go into a different amplified mode, which is this survival mode or is it anger? Molnar plays with these emotions and keeps the pacing brisk to not allow the viewer to really take in these questions, but encourage us to go on the adrenaline-fueled journey with our characters. Now, Strange Darling does have some twists and turns, and as we get the big reveal of the twist, it feels like it needed to be further into this movie, as Molnar does attempt the same kind of style after the story arc, and that's when the viewer is spending a lot of their time processing and starting to piece together the clues to understand of what just happened. This can be more of a distraction because we're stuck with our thoughts versus watching what's on screen, but at the same time, in the filmmaker's defense, I can respect that there isn't a ton of dialogue to really digest, but really just actions from our characters to really piece this movie together. Along with some of the familiar cast here, especially by Ed Begley Jr. and Barbara Hershey, their limited scenes are overshadowed by the what and the how question. When they give a couple of great performances here, and I wished all eyes were on them. I was so busy trying to comprehend and piece together and study these characters, it was a shame that I couldn't really put my focus on Ed Begley Jr. because I feel like my thoughts were going to be lost in translation, and I would be lost in the future of the movie. Strange Darling did actually take me by surprise, whereas the movie went on, I thought it was going to be the same predictable formula, just with Molnar attempting a different style. But the more the story unfolded and the more and more curious this movie became, where I didn't know what direction it was going to take or the messaging it was going to try and accomplish. Molnar accomplishes his theme and messaging in the full runtime in a single line of dialogue within the climax that really does put the chef's kiss on what we just experienced. Even though flawed when it comes to the timing of a nice twist, what I respected about the telling of this story is that we just focus on our two characters during the main runtime. We don't have a police chase, we don't have frustrated detectives trying to follow the clues, we don't have abandoned body parts anywhere, we don't get a lot of gore. We get this story of a lady and a demon, and the build a chemistry that makes us uneasy but engage in the intimacy of their one-night stand encounter. The human nature of them going all in sexually with each one's intent different on the outcome. They both go in the intent with nothing to lose, but just with different motivations. And it's a summary of the climax that Molnar really ties it together. Strange Darling is one of those movies that once it hits streaming, I think and hope it will gain some traction. It's a very small movie that's easy to be overlooked, and it's also one of those movies that you will either like it or you'll hate it. But for me, the characters worked, the performances worked, and the biggest win for this movie is our writer-director J.T. Molnar and how he makes the serial killer story fresh again. I'm giving Strange Darling 3.5 stars. And that's a cut on this week's edition of The Movie Wire. I want to thank you for listening and thank you for your support. You can also show support by following me on Instagram, Blue Sky, X, Thread, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and Letterboxd at Movie Wire Show. And please don't forget to leave a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. And if you haven't checked out the Cult-Worthy Cinema Podcast and The Movie Wire's new show, Back to the Balcony, the link to that show will be in the description of this episode. Until next week, do me a favor and make sure you stay for after the credits of a movie to show the respect to those that put their blood, sweat, and tears into making a feature film and support your local movie theaters.
Little Movie Wire podcast is winding down. Justin Henson's here to break it down. Hellboy flopped, it needs some Jesus. Leave No Evil gave us thrills that we can't fake. Transformers 1, oh we missed the beat. Strange Darling had us on our feet. So this is it, we're closing the show. twist, every rise and fall. Thanks for tuning in, it's been a blast. Till next time, keep the fun going fast. From the highs to the lows, we've seen it all. Catch every twist, every rise and fall. Thanks for tuning in, it's been a blast. Until next time, keep the fun going fast. Justin Henson signing off tonight. Keep your movie nights full of delight. This ends the movie wire, it's been a thrill. Catch you after the credits. There's nothing after the credits. Damn it! After credits roll, we say farewell. Join us next time, we'll have more tales to tell.
Thank you for bringing me to the movies.